Hello and welcome to another episode of Raw Chatter. I am your host speaking, Vicky Midwood, integrative health, nutrition and lifestyle coach, and of course the addiction eliminator. And have I got an amazing guest for you today, folks. I have a delightful story about meeting this lady nearly 12 months ago now, and what she was talking about then has actually come to fruition. She has become a best-selling author. She is also a podcaster in her own right, and she is a social scientist. Dr. Gretchen Holmes, PhD. I would love you to introduce yourself to our audience and tell them what was it that prompted you to write this amazing book, The Work in Between.
Aw, thank you, Vicky. It's so good to see you. I can't believe it's been a year already. Holy smokes. I'm so excited to talk about my book. You talk about things for a while and you think it's never going to happen. And then all of a sudden it's here. It's interesting. I started my weight loss journey in 2021. I was already a 3-time cancer survivor, and then I was diagnosed diabetic, and that really shook me to my core. That was harder on me in a lot of ways than dealing with the cancer, because I'd been watching my younger brother struggle with diabetes, and he'd already lost a leg, and he was on dialysis, and I thought, this is my future. If I don't do something now, that's what's going to happen. And it was crushing my heart to see what Eric was going through. And so I started a weight loss program and was very successful, lost 110 pounds. And That was 2.5 years ago. I've kept it off, other than, you fluctuate some, especially at my age. And but overall, my health is great, happy in the world. But about a year after, I started a podcast called The Work in Between, which it's in over 30 countries. I can't believe that either. But it was really focused on the work that we do in between the before photo and the after photo.
Right.
Because we all love a transformational story, right? We love those pictures.
We do. Yep, we absolutely do. But what we don't realize is just exactly what is the journey that goes on in between the two of them, do we?
Exactly. And that's what I wanted to focus on, because everybody gets so focused on that external measure, that metric, that they don't realize that all the work really happens inside. And plus, I also thought, wow, I don't even understand all the factors that are contributing to my being obese and my being unhealthy. And, because for like most of us, I blame myself 100%. It was all me, 100% me. And while I had to take responsibility for what I was putting in my mouth, there's a lot of competing factors out there that were helping me along the way. So I thought, if I want to kind of sort through all of this, maybe other people would find it valuable. So that's why I started the podcast, partly for self-preservation,
Right.
So I could become more informed, so that I could develop better strategies. And so along the way, people started asking, do you have a book? Have you written a book yet? And I thought, about what? What am I going to write a book about? And they said, well, it's a pretty amazing weight loss, and you're a 3-time cancer survivor. And I thought, well, I can write maybe. So I started writing, and the strangest thing happened, because what was supposed to be a book about weight loss
isn't.
Had nothing to do with that. Ultimately I talk about it, but what I found, because I started going to therapy and I started working with a transformational coach, and I started really looking at what was causing me to self-soothe with food in the first place, ended up being a book about a journey toward learning how to love myself enough and respect myself enough to treat myself really well. And so the book, what was supposed to be almost a how-to, I can do it so you can do it, ended up being a very raw and personal memoir about my journey from childhood, where a lot of our traumas happen, and the healing that's occurred over the course of my life. And so I started doing it because the last straw was somebody on LinkedIn sent me an email and said, I looked for a book by you on Amazon and I didn't find one. Have you not written one? And I thought, that's it.
That's the cue. I love it.
So long explanation, but that's why I decided to write the book.
And this is where I think just the way that you've explained it, we don't necessarily realize, because, and you kind of say this towards the end of the book, when you give the acknowledgements that it was actually a journey of really self-discovery. But one of the things that you kind of said is that when we're just getting on with life, we just think, well, this is the norm. This is just what we do. And we don't necessarily see things as being traumatic, because if that is how our life is and this is how we get through, we just accept it as being normal. And I think when you've gone through to describe how you used to talk about yourself, so I've put a few markers in the book and I've made all kinds of notes and stuff, because there's some powerful things that you kind of share with people. And the beauty of this is, as you've said, although it started off being driven by the idea of it being a weight loss book, it's going to help people who are struggling with family issues. If there is, for example, an alcoholic in the family, or if somebody has an illness that is a lifelong thing, like your elder brother, Chris, was hemophiliac, and that's in your family's history. And just knowing that there are other families that have multiple issues going on. You were also the middle child, the only girl of two other boys, and mom was kind of busy looking after dad and working and looking after Chris, your elder brother. And so you kind of were just sort of lost in the mix of getting on with stuff. And there's a poignant line here that I think a lot of people are going to be able to resonate with. And obviously I picked it out, therefore I resonate with it. But it says, I told myself, you don't deserve to have nice things. You want them, but you can't have them because you don't look like everybody else. Look at you. You're lucky you even have friends because of the way that you look. And that was something that I could definitely resonate with. And I'm sure anybody who has felt that they don't look right, doesn't have to be that you're overweight, does it? It could be anything. Just that sense of, I don't deserve to have nice things. Therefore, I don't deserve to be nice to myself. And I think that was a lot of your story, wasn't it?
It was, and though I didn't realize it, because like you say, you normalize it, and we don't necessarily have that conversation when you're a kid and say, wow, I'm really having self-doubts here. I don't think I'm treating myself very well. That's not how it happens. You just kind of accept whatever your thoughts are as truth. And it is, because that's what you know. It wasn't until I was much, much older that I realized that I was constantly settling. Like anything the world, the universe decided that I could have, that was good enough. And I wasn't going to ask for more. I always was searching for more, but I wasn't going to ask for it. I wasn't going to try to get a bigger piece of whatever it is that I was going after. And looking back, of course, that kind of makes me sad, because I thought, wow, there could have been a lot of really amazing things that you could have experienced. However, looking back, I experienced some pretty amazing, awesome things. So my mom told me when I was younger, bad things happen to everybody. Good things happen to everybody. You don't have to build a monument to the bad things. So you don't have to walk around carrying that with you and building this, dedicating your life to this bad thing that's happened. But I realized that because I realized that bad things happen to everybody and good things happen to everybody, I never particularly questioned why all the bad things were happening to me, nor did I question when the good things were happening to me. I just kind of accepted things as they came. There's good parts to that, and there's stuff that I wish I wouldn't have been so accepting, but ultimately it helped me not become a victim as far as me purposefully and intentionally shouting from the rooftops that the reason I haven't excelled in life is because I grew up in an alcoholic home or, whatever. And I think ultimately that served me well.
I think it did. But you've also mentioned there that you settled for things, and that going through the journey, particularly of your cancer journey, and especially in the early stages, and we talked about this just in a conversation privately with ourselves, but also last year, which, just to let people know, we met at the Obesity and Diabetes Summit last year in America, and you were talking then all about how we need to communicate better with patients, and you kind of settled for being treated, in hindsight, really badly by a lot of the medical professionals who are supposed to be in the caring world, but actually were not particularly caring or compassionate because of your size. And you kind of accepted that, rather than them investigating things, they just, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see if it gets any worse. And in hindsight, particularly when you found the third cancer, that was terrible advice.
It is, but it's so common that when people who are obese or morbidly obese walk into your medical provider's office, they have stereotypes and biases as well. We all make assumptions about people based on how they look. Yep. What I found especially disturbing in retrospect was how dismissed I was, when in fact I was providing a lot of really important information about the symptoms I was having. Yeah. And they were always attributed to my weight, always. And you get tired of that. That's partly why you end up not going to the doctor anyway, because you're like, they're not listening to me anyway. They're automatically going to assume it's because I'm fat. Yeah. Now, some things are attributed to that. And fair enough, but not everything is. And to blind themselves to the idea that maybe something else was going on, when in fact I had endometrial cancer and it could have been treated much earlier. Right. Had a physician decided, wow, maybe it's not just because she's overweight or obese, maybe there's something else to this. And it wasn't until, I kid you not, 5 years later, multiple physicians, that I walked in the door and got to meet who ended up being the physician who was probably one of the few who ever did listen to me. And he jumped on it so fast. We got all the right tests, we got the right procedures, all of those things. Come to find out, it was cancer, luckily stage 1, but it still was cancer. And it just was so telling to me that I, instead of fighting, and I'm pretty vocal, but it wears you down. After a while, you're like, what's the point? Mm-hmm. And that is the sad part for me. And so, in fact, I'm giving a talk in a couple of weeks on self-advocacy as patients. Right. We know our bodies. We know when something's going wrong. And sometimes we have to, as folks who are overweight or obese or whatever the issue is, we have to be louder. We have to be more insistent, because we've got to cut through a lot of noise that maybe other people don't have. Yeah.
Which is a sad truth, but awareness and the fact that, when we know that, at least we can at least try to do something about it. It is the key. And I love that what you said there is that because you put up with the bleeding and the uncomfortable, all of those symptoms, which again, as you say in the book, in hindsight, it actually did affect your quality of life ridiculously.
Oh, awful.
But you were just getting on with it. And 5 years is a heck of a long time to be putting up with that. And anybody who's struggling with any issues, whether it's anything like PCOS or really terrible issues around their periods, will know that when you're in pain consistently, it's miserable. Yeah. It affects everything and everybody around you, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. It does. And anybody who makes do and accommodates knows that you just figure out strategies on how you can just continue to live your life. So you don't even realize how ridiculous some of these things are until you don't have to do them anymore. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't until I was practically hemorrhaging in the restroom at work that finally got somebody's attention on the first time. And yet again, they still were very patient and we're going to watch it and here's some medicine. And when I found out another colleague of mine, pretty much the same age, going through exactly the same thing, but she was not overweight, they treated it much more aggressively. She didn't have cancer. I did. And so the disparity there is uncomfortable at best, but I find it really upsetting because there's so much additional suffering going on that we, after a while, like I said, we don't even talk about it. We just make do and we figure out a way around it. And that's what we do. And I did that as a young girl growing up in an alcoholic home. I did it as an obese person going throughout my entire life. I just accommodated. I self-censored. I tried to live a full life, and I'm not saying I didn't, but I know that I definitely opted out of things because of the limitations or how I felt people were going to perceive me, because why put yourself through that any more than you have to? And then what I realized was, even though I used to get all sorts of nasty comments, the public is very vocal about what they think about you. They were nothing compared to the messages I was telling myself.
Yeah. And there's a line in there that says, other people's words can hurt, but nothing is more hurtful than the words that we say to ourselves, which is, so many women, I think, will be going, yeah, we're really nasty to ourselves.
Abusive. Abusive. Yeah.
And this is the overriding, I felt, message from the book was, you have to appreciate your positives. You have to appreciate what is good about you. And that's not something that you ever sat down and thought about, because even the fact that when you recognize that you've got now all of these qualifications, and I mean, just pursuing like you did to get your PhD before then moving on, so many people would have probably thrown in the towel. I mean, it took you 10 years, didn't it, to get the PhD? And this is where...
I'm sorry. The PhD I got done very quickly. I got it done in 4.5 years, but it took me 12 years to get a bachelor's degree.
Right. So it was the bachelor's degree that took you a long time. Right. And so when I was reading that through, I was just like, that's... In and of itself, that's quite incredible mental determination and stamina, because you didn't find studying easy either, did you, to begin with? You got excellent at it, but you certainly didn't.
Well, nobody in my family had ever gone to college before. And it was really important to me to go to college. I just didn't know how to do it.
Right.
And there wasn't money set aside for me to go to college. Nobody was offering me, here's your college fund. Where do you want to go? And it's okay. There are other options. A lot of people don't get a college fund, but I had to work and go to school. And when I first started, I was failing everything. I didn't have a lot of self-discipline. I didn't know how to do what others. It seemed like it was so easy to them, but I didn't know how to do it. I was a B student. I was never an extraordinary student, but I really wanted to go to college because I felt less than because I had never gotten a bachelor's degree when all of my friends and all my peers had gone to college, and I felt very much behind. And so I struggled with that. And once I found, though, where my home was, where my academic home was, everything switched. And once I found communication, I went from being on academic probation to pretty much straight A's. And then I got the hang of it. Then I started to figure things out. But then life got in the way. And then I had to work. And then I couldn't take classes. And then my credits started to fade away because they were so old. And I was always really upset. And I was talking to a friend of mine one night, and I said, you know, I'm going to be 30 years old with a college degree. And that nobody should have to take that long to get a degree. And he said, you're going to be 30 years old anyway. Do you want a degree or you want to not have a degree? And I thought, oh, yeah. Okay, well, that's true. So I'd rather have a degree. So I went back to school, was able to finish in a couple of years, went to NYU. It was amazing. And so then I graduated magna cum laude. I mean, I did great. And then I went and got my master's, and then I went and got my PhD. And I figured that whole school thing out.
But that's such a powerful message, I think, for anybody listening, whether they're a young person who is in the university degree phase themselves, or you're a parent of a child who is going through that and is maybe struggling. It's so important to realize that it may just be that it's not the right course, or it's not the right subject. And it doesn't mean that you're never going to get a degree and that you're a failure, because I think that particularly now, with so much emphasis on social media with productivity and achievement, and you've got to have this kind of status, the idea that potentially you've chosen the wrong thing and that you might have to switch is still, I think, seen as a failure. And it's just not, is it?
Oh, no. Sometimes it's the wrong field, sometimes it's the wrong time.
Yeah.
And nobody really ever said that you have to get a degree right out of college or right out of high school. Frankly, most of us had no idea what we wanted to do. We'd never done anything. How were you supposed to know what we wanted to pursue? So I am a big believer, even as a professor, would have conversations with my students. And so do you even really want to be here right now? Because we will always be here. If you want to go work for a while, if you want to go in the military, if you want to go to a vocational, what do you want to do? Don't come to school just because that's the next box you need to check, because A, you don't really get an education that way, and B, that's a lot harder. It's so much easier when you are ready for it, it's your time, and you have a much bigger why behind why you're wanting to do it. And so I told a lot of students, you might want to really think about other options and come back when you're ready. And some of them did, and they came back and they did fantastic. And others stuck it out and they figured it out along the way. But there is no one path. And it does not mean you are not successful. It just means you're not getting your degree right now. It's okay.
And that's such a powerful message. There's so much that this helps people to kind of realize and bring across. And the one thing is that you've described there, that comment that person made about, do you want to be 30 with a degree or 30 without a degree? Because you're going to be 30 anyway. It's sometimes just those little things that are so poignant that we can take away and utilize for ourselves. But also what I loved about it was that what you shared when the cadets kind of took you under their wing. And that is, even again, that is so powerful, because it's the first time that I kind of really got, and then the message at the end kind of carries that on, this idea that you need people to help you. You can't do this stuff on your own. And those guys were there to help you no matter what. And I just love when you talk about the incident in the pool. Do you want to just tell people what I'm talking about?
Yeah, so I was a professor, and I was losing weight because I was always losing weight. I'd been relatively successful. I'd lost about 60 pounds. And unbeknownst to me, a couple of my students who were brothers were in Army ROTC. And one day I was working out at this lovely facility that we had at the university, and a sergeant in the Army came up to me and said, ma'am, we've been watching you and we would love to help you reach your health goals. And I thought, why? I mean, that was the strangest interaction for me. One of my students was with him, and I went, what's going on here? And they said, well, we really think that we can help you, and we would love to have you join us. We do PT at 5:45 a.m. every morning, Monday through Friday. And if you want to join us, we'd love to have you. Just show up. And by the way, tomorrow we're going to be in the pool, so wear a swimsuit under your sweats. Wow. And I thought, well, no, I'm not doing that. That's crazy. And so, of course, I was there at 5:45 the next morning with my swimsuit under my sweats. And this amazingly gorgeous major comes walking up to me, introduces himself, and says, oh, we're so glad to have you here. So we did some warm-up stuff, and he said, now we're going to go hit the pool. And I thought, I'm not getting in the pool. I'm not taking off my sweats in front of you. So I was in the pool, of course, and I'm an okay swimmer. Nobody would mistake me for a gifted swimmer. And I was trying to keep up and was not doing a very good job of it. And then it was the end of the session, and one of the little lieutenants came up to me and said, ma'am, it's your turn. We're doing fireman carries the length of the pool, where you carry somebody the length of the pool. And I went, because I was hanging on the side of the pool trying to breathe. And I said, I appreciate that, but I think I'm going to pass. And she said, yes, ma'am, it's your turn. And I thought, I'm not in the Army. I don't have to do this. So I tried. I did it. I thought I was going to die. And when I got to the end of the pool, all of the cadre, all of the ROTC, the cadets, were standing there waiting for me. And I looked up, and I was so overtaken with emotion. And I said, why are you all standing there? And one of them said, ma'am, we'll always wait for you.
It's amazing. Yeah.
I'd never experienced that. And so that's when I was in tears, because I had never experienced that kind of probably acceptance or patience or being treated like I was important enough to wait for. It was very powerful for me.
Yeah, and it's really powerful to read that in the book, and that's why I wanted to share it, because I think that was a big shift for you to because that bit that I shared before, how you really didn't think you deserved anything, and you definitely didn't speak to yourself nicely. All of a sudden, you actually felt part of worthy enough, even if it didn't last. At least you knew what it felt like, and they really did champion you, didn't they? They really did support you through that journey. And to the extent that you were even going to do jumping out of an aeroplane, which darn it didn't happen.
I didn't. We had a weather delay, but it was an extraordinary experience, and I still stay in touch with some of those guys, and they still champion me. And I will say I was never in the military, but I was very honored and humbled to be able to tangentially be a part of what they have, and I'm super supportive of them. And that was a very pivotal pivotal time in my life, for sure.
And I think the other pivotal time, as you've explained, was what happened with Eric when you lost him, and the frustration that I felt on your behalf reading that book, because you really take us through just how, again, you kind of settled, but you didn't have any choice, because you were trying to ring and find out what was going on with him, and nobody was returning your calls, to suddenly then get a call to say he's passed.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how that must have felt. And so many of what you then share in the book afterwards, you talk about, you still think about him and wish you could have done it differently.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that sort of stuff now? Because you've done a lot of work with coaches who have helped you through. Do you think you can look at it in a slightly different way now?
For the most part, yes. Do I still have moments where I kick myself and beat myself up? I do. It's not as often anymore. I've tried to reframe the events, and I carry guilt? I do. And my brother would not be happy with me. So he would be very mad that I would even be considering feeling bad. But I still have my moments. I do. But it's taken a lot of other folks who have helped me work through grief and survivor's guilt, and letting him down, I felt, and letting myself down. And I'm the only one left. My mom and dad and both brothers are gone, and I have an amazing husband and an amazing daughter and grandchildren, and my life is full. My life is full of blessings. But there is something very difficult when you are the last one standing. And it's a club nobody wants to be a member of, but many of us are. And I think that it does put a different perspective on the world, and in very different ways. For me, I decided I really wanted to do something to honor them, to honor Eric, and that has been a big part of why I'm doing what I'm doing. But ultimately, this has been to honor myself, which, to honor them, the most amazing thing I could do is honor myself, because they loved me. They told me how wonderful I was. I just didn't always believe them. So now I am taking all of that and trying to do something very positive with it.
And it is, it's an awesome book, and reading through how you describe just the family dynamic with both of your brothers, is that, the love shines through, and for your mum as well, just powerful. The way that talk about certain incidents, and how when you moved, they moved as well to be with you and support you, and some of the stuff that you shared when Eric, bless him, was cooking for you, with that horrific experience where you had to go through the radioactive iodine treatment, which I can't even imagine how horrendous that was. You give us a taste of it in the book, but even using your imagination, I don't quite think I could imagine what you actually went through. And to be kept, I was amazed when you said you it's dangerous for people to be radioactive around other people, so they kept you in the room until you were no longer radioactive. And just that description of the guy in the hazmat suit passing you this pill that even he didn't want to touch, and you've got to put it inside your body. Quite amazing. Yeah,
it was very, and I will say, I'm very close to my mom and my brothers. I loved my dad as well, even though he had an alcohol problem and he had other issues. He just made it harder to love sometimes. My hope as I was writing this book was not to demonize him, but to just really honestly talk about what are the challenges when there's addiction in the family and how it affects everybody. And while it's easy to hate those people sometimes, man, it was truly those addictions that we hated, not my dad. But he wasn't the easiest guy to love, but he tried. I mean, he really did try, and we had a lot of good times as well. So
yeah, and that does come across. It absolutely, it does. Yeah, no, he's definitely not been made out to be the bad guy. I think one of the other powerful things was when you shared that we started this podcast, you said your weight loss journey really started kind of later on, but you've been on and off really the whole of your life with issues around food and weight and what have you. But you decided that this time you needed to do it differently. And I love the bit that you share when you recognized that you didn't want to do what you'd done before, where you'd been following the Weight Watchers program and then you'd come off it and then you'd put the weight back on and then you go back on and all of that. And you recognized that there was a key that you needed to figure out for yourself, and you wanted food to be delicious. You wanted it to be tasty, you wanted to enjoy it, and it not be something that you were going to have to think about and battle with all of the time. Now, you've kept that weight off, and you feel amazing, you've said.
I do.
I'm guessing you found the solution for yourself. So do you want to share just how did you change how you looked at food?
Yeah, I think this surprises people, but it was my mindset, 100% my mindset. So when I was diagnosed diabetic, like I said, it really shook me. And on my way home, I realized, I kid you not, this kind of warm feeling, vibration came over me. I realized I had time. Because I'd just been diagnosed diabetic. It wasn't uncontrolled. It hadn't done a ton of damage. And I thought, I have time. I can do something here. Unlike my brother, who I knew did not have a lot of time. Yeah. And it immediately shifted into gratitude.
Right.
Now, I will tell you, that was a whole different experience for me, because what I was used to was approaching this whole process, this whole lifestyle thing from a place of anger and self-pity and punishment. Right. And this time it was about gratitude. Now I approached it from, okay, now let's see, how do I want to do this so I can do this for the rest of my life, so that I build a lifestyle that I love. Now, I like to cook. That helps. So I decided that I would only eat food that was really delicious, that I absolutely loved. So for that reason, I don't eat kale. I don't like kale. I don't know why, but I can't do kale. But I will eat everything else. But I started putting a lot of spices on stuff. My husband would smoke turkey breast for me to have every week. So I had it from whatever I needed it for. I would prepare my veggies. I started roasting them and using balsamic vinegars and all of that stuff. And I looked forward to every meal I ate because it was delicious. And I found after a couple of weeks that my taste buds started to change. When you get rid of all those ultra processed foods, your taste buds wake up. And all of a sudden, there is nothing that tastes better than a beautifully roasted carrot, which is bizarre to me because that is not what I was eating. So yeah, I retrained everything, and I still take my lunch to work every day because that way I can control what I'm eating, and I make outstanding salads. I'm really good at salads. But they're hearty and they're filling. And I make sure that I always have really healthy options for side dishes or the proteins. And my meals are incredibly delicious and way better than anything that I used to eat. And that has allowed me to sustain this because I eat really good, delicious, amazing food, and I love it. So that has been key for me. That, and I'm still incredibly grateful.
So anybody listening may think, well, that can never happen to me. But it literally is a case of that mindset is the key piece, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because you were following the counting the points and the, this is what you should be eating. But if you're not enjoying food, if you're feeling, as you say, you're coming from a place of resentment, deprivation, lack, I'm missing out, it's only a matter of time before you're going to throw in the towel. But because you decided to do it differently, and as you say, cooking from scratch, allowing yourself to play around with different condiments and spices and actually different ways of cooking that perhaps you'd not done before, means that it's now exciting and it's a joy, isn't it?
Oh, it really is. And I'll tell you, when I'm doing that, it reinforces that I'm important enough to myself to take the time and invest in my health. So it's worth saying to my husband, I don't want to stop there for dinner when we're on the road. Let's keep looking. I'd like to find something that is more healthy so I can make some better choices. It may not be the perfect choice, but it's bound to be a better choice, not just the easiest choice. And so for me to ask others to be a little bit inconvenienced, that's a new thing, because I never minded being inconvenienced by other people, but I surely was not going to ask anyone to be inconvenienced for me. But now I try not to be obnoxious about it, but if there are better options, I will speak up. And even if somebody isn't happy about it,
tough.
I don't know what to tell you, Tough. I try to be fair, but I'm worth people going, wait, okay. Because the one thing that I learned, which is so important, especially for women, is that we have expended so much energy into helping other people achieve their dreams and achieve their goals, whether it's health goals or job dreams or whatever they want to do. Man, we're there. We are supporting them. We are giving of ourselves. We, in fact, give more than ourselves than we should probably. And yet, we never give ourselves that kind of effort and energy and support to achieve our own dreams. But we surely will do it for other people. And I'm saying our dreams are just as important. Our goals are just as important as everybody else's. And so we should be able to put that much energy and effort into ours too. And even if we are so bold, ask others to support ours.
Which for you, that was just not how you'd done things in the past. So that was a massive, massive mind shift. And this is the joy of it, when you realize that A, you can shift it, and B, it's not as hard as you thought. And nobody's going to come down on you like a ton of bricks, and nobody's going to turn around and just say, you can't be like that. It's okay. And not only is it okay, it then gets to be quite empowering, doesn't it? There's a line that you said, and I just want to quote this. It's on page 143 of the book, and I think this is kind of really puts that in just a single sentence. Once I started loving myself, my eating fell in line. And that's such a key message, because if you're coming from hate and, trying to punish yourself by eating food that you don't enjoy, like you say, because eat kale because somebody tells you, even if you hate it, it's just like, absolutely not. And I love the bit that you said, if you want to eat cake, you'll have cake, but only if it's really excellent, delicious cake, not if it's rubbish cake.
That's right. It's got to be worth it.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think you said as well, which is, it's a powerful message. I think it's the start of chapter 19. It starts with, I found my voice, speaking out. You're speaking out. And you always said, live life loudly. And I love that, because if you don't ask people for what you want, how are they going to know how to help you? And I think the other thing that you've had to learn to do, and I've definitely had to learn to do it, I think anybody who's struggled with any kind of issue around body or weight, is we have to learn to receive gracefully. And that's sometimes a challenge, isn't it?
Oh. It is. And I think part of it's because the voices in our heads are so loud filled with negativity and unworthiness and self-hate and shame, and you name it, all of them, that I think it is incredibly difficult to not only give ourselves grace, which is really hard, but we really need to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
But to, the dichotomy here is we so desperately want that from other people. We want acceptance, and we want love, and we want friendship, and we want all of that connectedness. But when they offer it, we often reject it because we don't feel worthy to receive it, while we are so freely giving it to others. And one of the big epiphanies that I had, because one of the things that I had people tell me is, wow, doesn't it make you angry that people treat you differently because you've lost all this weight? And I said, no, because I treat me differently because I lost all this weight. Why would I expect other people to not treat me differently? And I think it had more to do with I treat myself better, which I think even if I hadn't lost all the weight, I still think I would be treating myself a whole lot better than I used to, because I had come to peace with who I am and the fact that I deserve to be here, and my life is just as important as other people's lives. And I don't care what the scale says. We all need to believe that, because I also believe we're not going to make whatever changes we want to make on the inside without doing that inside work, because that is where the magic happens. It's not the scale. I figured out at some point that if I worked on my relationship with food, the scale would follow.
Correct.
And it did.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about the scale. I didn't really care how long it took. I just wanted to feel better. And now, don't get me wrong, I like shopping now. Man, my closet is ridiculous. And I like feeling good and looking good and all that. I do. But the gift for me was forgiveness, self-forgiveness, and really healing a lot of what I was still carrying with me into adulthood. So I've learned to let a lot of that go. And now there's so much more room for joy and happiness, even with all the loss, even with all the bad stuff. I still think I'm probably overly blessed in many ways because of my family's, the family I had, the family I have now, my friends, my new friends, the friends I haven't met yet, my job, all of these things. I mean, who gets to be loved so much? And so, but it all started because I finally figured out I was worth loving. And it's cliche, but it's so true. It is so true.
And it is. And I think the overriding message is that you can't help yourself if you hate yourself. You can't heal through hate. And you sometimes need to allow people to just give you that support. And this is where coaches come in. This is where listening to podcasts like this, like the podcast that you share with some incredible people that you've had on there. Because sometimes when we realize that other people have done it and their story is similar to ours, and we understand they're talking our language, you can suddenly go, well, okay, maybe I can then. Just maybe, because that's all it takes, isn't it? Just a little chink of maybe I can feel differently, do it differently. Let's just give it a go. And that is when the work can then begin. Yeah. And as you say, it's the internal work. So this is an awesome read. I have to say, folks, it's one of those where just set yourself aside 2 or 3 hours, because once you start, you're not going to want to put it down. I certainly didn't. You can get it from Amazon. It's available on Kindle version as well as paperback. Where else can people find it, Gretchen?
Well, thank you for your kind words. I am very proud of this work, and I hope that what it does is provide people with hope and empowerment, to know that they can do it. They truly can. I think we connect most strongly through our stories, and when we are really honest, and I am probably overly honest, I think that's when we start to realize, oh man, I'm not the only one that's suffering with this kind of stuff. There's other people that are just as messed up as I am. But you can find it. You can go to my website, which is GretchenHolmesPhD.com. There are links there. You can find it on BarnesandNoble.com, of course, Amazon. You can go to the publisher page in Podium Press. That's also on my website. I'm on LinkedIn, so if you want to reach out to me there, please do. I love hearing from folks, and I really hope that you'll buy my book and then reach out to me and let me know what you thought, and if you feel so inclined, I love to see the reviews. So far, they've been very positive. People feel that it's a very approachable book, and very valuable. And I'll tell you, we can't do all this stuff alone. None of us can. I don't think we were meant to. So find your people, find your tribe, and let them help you. And I promise you that is the first step to transformation. It truly is. And then you can the sky's the limit. You have no idea what amazing things are waiting for you.
And that is the incredible thing, isn't it? Because when you start to see things differently, you start to realize that there is so much out there that you didn't even know existed before. You also have your podcast. So tell us, where do people listen to the podcast? Are you on all of the normal channels?
Yes. So The Work in Between, it's a brilliant title, I think. It's all about the work we do between those before photos and our after photos, or before we knew what we were doing and after we figured things out. Yeah. You can find me on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Podbean and iHeartRadio. There are podcast links on my website as well. And I have met so many amazing people, and they have helped me so much, and they continue to help me. And I'm not even pretending that I have all the answers. I don't. I just, I get angels put in my path that help get me to the next step all the time. And now I just look for them instead of pretending I don't need them. So they're there.
That's a fabulous message. So if there was one thing that you would like to leave people with from this podcast, what would that be?
The one message that I am trying to get out to everybody is that no matter what it is in your life that is not working for you, whatever that thing is, if it's external especially, the answer is internal. It is all about doing that inside work in order to whatever your goals are. So look internal. Instead of you have weight to lose, what does the scale say? Don't worry about that. Look internal, because that's where those answers are, and get somebody to help guide you through that path. That is really, really important. That, and I truly believe, and I stop every podcast with this. The path to good health starts with loving yourself. We can't hate ourselves to good health or shame ourselves to good health, but we can love ourselves to good health. It's really important.
That is an amazing message. Thank you so much. And on that note, folks, I just want to say, if you have enjoyed this episode, please give us some thumbs up, some likes. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Don't miss the next episode. And if you think that this is going to be helpful to anybody that you know, point them in the direction of this podcast. And I am going to leave you with this, as I always do. We only have one life, as far as we know, and one body. So look after it, because it is looking after you. Gretchen, thank you so much. And until next time, take care of yourselves, folks. Goodbye.
Thank you.